what would happen if we had actual meaningful police reform in this country? I think that'd be really cool. You know, I think we could make a lot of progress in this country if we had meaningful police reform. That would affect everybody, you know. But the thing is, like, how do we get there? And how would we know that we got there? What would it look like? You know, what are the goals? Has anybody really talked about this? Has anybody thought this through all the way? Probably. There's probably a lot of people who are out there who thought it through all the way. I've thought it through most of the way, but I'm not a cop, you know. I'm not a politician. I'm not anything like that. Just a guy. But I have an idea, and I think it just might work. But let me talk about one other thing first, okay? I want to talk about the riots, because the riots are going on right now because people are hurting, people are afraid, and it's causing a lot of tension between the black community and the white community, and the left and the right, Democrats, Republicans, all this other kind of stuff. You got Trump being, you know, blustery, saying he's going to do things that he can't do. But still, it frightens people, you know? And over on TikTok, because I got a thing over on TikTok, I hear a lot of people talking about they're going to boycott on July the 4th and June the 19th, Juneteenth Day, and I think some people are saying July the 4th through the 7th, they're going to boycott things. And I get the heart of it, you know, I see what they're trying to accomplish. But it's not going to do anything. We've seen boycotts like this before, and they are just a blip on the radar. You know, because what happens is if, say you've got a boycott for July 4th and nobody's going to buy anything on July the 4th, they're not going to buy anything from a store that isn't black owned on July the 4th through July the 7th. What are they going to do? They're going to buy a whole bunch of stuff on July the 3rd, you know, and they're going to stock up. So it's not going to make any kind of a difference whatsoever. You can boycott stuff on Juneteenth Day. Again, the people who are going to boycott anything on Juneteenth Day is like minute. Probably like a large percentage of the black population and a large percent of the people of the white population who, you know, have some white guilt or something like that. But it's not going to be that many people, and they're just going to stock up the day before anyway, you know? So here's what I'm proposing, because we want the riots to stop. Here's another thing about riots, right, is that they don't achieve any kind of lasting change. You know, it's difficult for them to achieve their goal and get anything that's gonna last at all, right? So the only way that change actually comes is if you use a smart strategy, right? So, and by that I mean like setting SMART goals. It's the SMART, SMART goals. So it's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, right? And so right now the rioters are just out there just rioting because they're angry, and the protesters are out there protesting because they're mad and they want something, but they don't really know what they want, right? And that's a big problem. So here's my proposal, okay? In the military, see, I'm a veteran, and in the military we have this thing called the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and we call it the UCMJ, and it exists because military people have to be held to a higher standard. They have to be held to a higher standard because these are people with weapons, and they're trained to kill, and they're trained to do things like that. So they have to be held to a higher ethical standard. Also, military folks operate in other countries, and they may operate from state to state, right? And the laws are always different in different countries, and they're different in different states. And there are certain things that are very military specific that don't really apply based on civilian laws to military people, you know? So you got this kind of amorphous thing that doesn't really fit into local laws. So they developed a Uniform Code of Military Justice so that no matter where a military member is, there is a law by which they have to abide at all times, right? And what that means, though, is that So say I'm, an airman, like when I was an airman, say I got a DUI, driving under the influence. And under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, there are very specific laws that enforce punishments for driving under the influence, or drug use, or spousal abuse, or things like that. Now, let's say I get picked up by the local authorities for a DUI, okay? And there may be some consequences for that. There may be some, some ramifications under the local law enforcement, but it's not necessarily going to affect my military career, okay? So there had to be a way that they could apply that law to my military career so that, say I get a DUI, they could say, okay, you're going to get demoted. You're going to lose this much pay. Things like that. You're going to be taken off of these duty assignments. You're going to be ineligible for promotion. You're going to have these sorts of things are going to happen. And it's a very, very clear delineation of rules that enable a commander or a first sergeant to be able to look up, okay, what was the offense? And this is what the UCMJ recommends, so we're going to do thus and such, and, boom, the problem is dealt with. So what I'm proposing is a sort of uniform code of police justice. Now, so that police are held to a higher standard. And that would be the first step. So I think we need to take a two-pronged approach in police reform. And the first step would be the Uniform Code of Police Justice. So what that would mean, though, is that on a national level, at a federal level, right, and I know this is going to cause some problems, and we can talk about that later, but at a federal level, we could say that all police at the state and local and federal level are held accountable to the Uniform Code of Police Justice, right? So that if a police officer murders a civilian, there's a very clear criteria of how they need to be held accountable. If police abuse their position, if police are caught, driving under the influence, or anything like that. And then what that would enable, that would provide governing criteria for police that would be, standard across the country, so that everybody would know that, there may be different laws in different places. Like, if you're in Detroit, speed limits may be like this, or the drug laws may be like that, or whatever. But you would know for a fact that if a cop pulled you over and you were guilty of DWB, driving while black, that if they got out of control, if they got out of hand, there would be a regulator who would hold that officer accountable, and it would eliminate the ability for the local law enforcement to make a decision based on kind of what was going on at the moment and stuff like that. And it's really starting to rain. Hold on a second. Okay. I love the sound of the rain, but I don't want it in my recording. Okay. So the other thing that you could do with something like a Uniform Code of Police Justice is you could make it like a tiered system, so that at no point is there like one federal magistrate who then has authority over the police, because you definitely don't want to do that. So you can set up layers within it, so that you can say, this UCPJ would be, have like local criteria, and then maybe county, and then state, and there'd be an overseer at the local, the county, and the state level, right? And then maybe you can make one that's regional. You got the West Coast and the East Coast, or I don't know, something like that. And then there'd be somebody at the federal level who would not, under any circumstances ever, no matter what, at all, have anything to do with the President of the United States. There would have to be a very, very incredibly strict barrier between this person who oversees civilian law enforcement, because this is civilian law enforcement, and anything that is remotely affiliated with the military, right? That would have to be an absolutely strict anyway. Would have to be. Try to sneak that past Republicans, right? But just saying. Anyway, so that's my proposal for that, is a uniform code of police justice, right? So but now I said it's a two-pronged approach for police reform, okay? So the second prong would be that underneath, it could be in tandem with the Uniform Code of Police Justice, but it would be mandatory leave, mandatory mental health counseling, mandatory de-escalation training. It would be, mandatory meditation time, things like that for police, because the reality is that we ask too much of our police force. We put them in harm's way on a regular basis, and they get amped up, and they don't get time to fall back and regroup. I've compared this before to like Marines. Like I knew some Marines who served in Fallujah, and I've known some soldiers who served in some really dark places in Iraq. And I've talked to those guys, and one of the things that they've said is that even though they were in that situation in Fallujah or in Iraq or knocking in doors or, under some kind of stress, they still had the idea that they were going to go home. They knew that it was going to be over, right? And for military members, if you're in a situation like that, if you're overseas, you may have a year ahead of you. You may have a year and a half ahead of you, right? Or you may only have 6 months ahead of you. Or you may, but there's a end date in sight when you can say, all right, I only have to keep this switch turned on until 120 days or 180 days or 365 days or whatever it is, and then I can turn that switch off. I can go home, I can relax, I can go see mom and the kids, get them some home cooking Thanksgiving meal, stuff like that. Cops don't get that. Cops do not have that. They get up every single day and they go into their town, they go into their cities, and they're knocking on doors and knocking in doors and pulling people over and doing all this other kind of stuff. And it's constant stress, it's constant drive, right? So what you would almost have to do is to say that you'd have to mandate like at least 30 days of vacation every year. You would have to mandate time off, if they're in a situation like that. But it would have to be overseen at the state level and at the federal level to make sure that these officers are being taken care of, to make sure that their mental health is being taken care of, right? And you'd also have to have, along with that, you'd have to have very strict screening guidelines at the state and federal level to make sure that we aren't hiring psychopaths, because there are some people, I don't know if you've seen these videos that were going around of some of the protests. I think it was Minneapolis, but there's like this little Asian guy, and man, he's just shucking and jiving. He's like ready for a fight. He's all in his riot gear, and he's like, oh yeah, bring it on, protesters. And he wanted to go and kick somebody's ass. This dude wanted a fight. And no. So under the system I'm proposing, just a video like that would be grounds to get him removed, or at least into counseling, into therapy, into something like that, mandatory meditation training, or like anger training, or send him to better martial arts training, or send him to de-escalation training or something like that, because that isn't the type of person that you want out there in the front lines. So there's a lot more to this idea, but I think that those are my approaches. Okay, so let me go back to the protests, okay? So this is my idea for what police reform should look like. Now, in order to get that, we're going to have to continue protesting, okay? So some folks are proposing Juneteenth Day or July the 4th through the 7th or anything like that, and as I said earlier, it's gonna be a little tiny blip and nothing's really gonna happen. So here's what I'm proposing, is that we as people who are part of or supporters of the Black Lives Matter movement, who, or even if you're not a supporter of that, if you see that there's a need for police reform, then you can get on board with this as well. You know, because some people don't support the Black Lives Matter, and that's fine. They see it as a terrorist organization. Cool, whatever, it's fine. It's a free country. See it however you want to see it. But you have to admit that there is a need for police reform, right? Even if you don't agree with Black Lives Matter. Can you agree with that? I think you can. So we can get both groups. We can get the BLM groups and we can get the non-BLM groups to meet on this and say, you know what? Let's get together. Let's stop these riots in the streets. Let's make this stop, right? So the boycott that I'm proposing, though, the protest that I'm proposing, is that we, as the citizens of the United States, as a unified front between the left and the right, the Democrats and Republicans, the BLM and the non-BLM, that we unify our voice by beginning a boycott of all the major department stores, all of the major fast food chains, all of the, in fact, if there is any place that you know there's a lobbyist who is influencing the vote of your senator, boycott that, right? I mean, I guarantee if you start boycotting Amazon, if you say, you know what, I'm canceling my Prime subscription, I'm not buying anything off of Amazon, I'm only buying from local suppliers, I'm not going to Walmart anymore, I'm not going to Wendy's, I'm not going to McDonald's, not going to Chick-fil-A, I'm not going to any of these places. They are not going to get a single dime from me until we have lasting and meaningful police reform in this country. And until something like the Uniform Code of Police Justice is adopted and accepted and mandated in all 50 states and has had, you know, some time to show that it works and we've worked the bugs out, right? Because I guarantee you, if it looks like Walmart's gonna fail, somebody's gonna listen. If it looks like McDonald's is gonna go under, somebody's gonna listen. You know, all these people, suddenly you'll have the owner of Chick-fil-A calling up his senator and saying, dude, someone's gonna give. I'm having to shut down stores. So pass this UCPJ, make this happen, okay? This is how we're going to use the power, okay? And this is how we're gonna stop the riots. And this is also how we're gonna come together as communities. Because if you stop going to these places that are poisoning us with their products anyway, and you start buying local, you start buying, you know, supporting local farmers, you start supporting these sorts of groups because you still have to feed your family, then we start having more community involvement, and oh my God, we start becoming a happier place. And if you want to get the luxuries back and those other sorts of things back, then, you know, you get police reform along with it. So, Sean's world, it seems like a win-win. A win-win-win-win-win-win-win. It's better for the cops. It's better for the citizens. It's better for black people. It's better for white people. It's better for business owners. It's better for government. It's better for everybody. In fact, the only people who wouldn't benefit from this is the mainstream media, right? Possibly the DNC and the RNC, but they hate you anyway, so who cares? That's a whole other video. I won't go down that road right now. So those are my thoughts on this. Please share this around, get some feedback. I know it's not a complete idea. I know that there's some holes in the logic. I see that, but I don't see anybody else coming up with a realistic proposal or a realistic timeline that people can get on board with. And I think this could actually work. So spread this around, get it in front of people who can, you know, move things, get it in front of Joe Rogan, get it in front of Cenk Uygur, get it in front of Tim Pool, I don't know, somebody who's not me, who has a voice, please, you know, I'm counting on the 6 degrees of separation to get this out to people who can actually get on board with this and make this a smart idea that can move and develop some change. So please help me out on this. I love you all very much. I care about this country deeply. I care about you as my brothers and sisters in this nation deeply. And I really want to see meaningful change, for my children, for your children, for our future. And I think we can do it. I think if we come together, we can make this happen. Like, we really, really can, right? So, I love you. I have faith in you. Let's do this. Bye.